The whole reason that social search exists is because we were sick of the friction that blogs were causing at the time.
There's a lot of talk in the industry of search has changed, and I used to be part of that crowd where I think search changed, but I've actually just changed that now to search has actually just moved.
The fact that social search allows you to start building that visibility and building that presence in those AI and LLMs now, while still having monetary value and revenue potential for right now as well, is super important.
That's the psychology of it. You almost go for trigger, exploration first, then evaluation, and then you go into search. And that journey there, you can see directly how different emotional triggers that go across there. That's how I think the psychology of search works. It's always been like that on Google. It's just multi-platform now.
But what they weren't doing was using search data to inform product decisions. And this was all done through a conversation around us as the search team. We was able to create a new product entry into a category for them.
We found for millennials in the US, it is when they get to the supermarket checkout and their card declines, that is when they know that they're in debt. And that's when they go to search for help.
So not only are they now the biggest brand in that space, grown the space as a result of their search content and their demand gen content in that conversation.
At Rise, we have this saying called "We chase consumers and not algorithm," because the algorithm always ends up chasing the consumer anyway.
Fantastic. We are live and I am back on the search standard. And today we have on Ashley Little and Ray City. This was the hardest time for me to actually try and concisely put together your introductions, because these two guests have been doing the absolute most. So Ashley is the co-founder of Deviation. He's also the brains behind the Search Everywhere framework. He's a search engine land columnist, Brighton SEO speaker, and has brands that dominate across TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, and AI platforms. Ray is the global head of marketing at Rise at 7. He spent a decade in the intersection of PR, social, and search. And he recently attended Cannes Lion as well, the Lion Fest as well. And he gave a talk there, I believe. Ray has been, just at the forefront of TikTok, Instagram, and Pinterest as well. So I've brought on the two masterminds to have this conversation with. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. But I think to get started, something that I actually wanted to dig into, which I think happened about, if I can say, about earlier this week, actually. Google natively started tracking social media performance, and that's a massive shift. So naturally, we obviously have to start with this question at the moment. What does this tell us about how Google views the future of multi-platform discovery over the next few years? And what's your guys' take on it? I think it must be a big win for you guys in search.
100%. I think it's something that we've been waiting for, right, Ash? It's long overdue in terms of especially here at Rise, we've spoke about it for years. Even before I was at Rise, we were talking about how social content had become search content. It was being indexed, it was being seen. We were getting views from it. Even some of these social platforms like TikTok were leading the way in terms of showing metrics, impressions, this kind of thing. And now finally Google has followed suit. Something we've definitely waited for. It's great. It's really, really good stuff.
Yeah, I think just to build on that as well, it's hindsight's always 2020, but in hindsight, they've sort of been building to this for the last probably 18 months. They've started to index more social content on their search engine results pages, and now they're showing us what that means for our brands in Google Search Console properties. So I think, we was probably shouting, saying, give us more, Google, give us more. And they've just been building the back end first. And now they are giving us access to that information and that data. So it's a really good time to be in that social search conversation for sure.
100%. And what I love about it as well is I've seen this a lot in the industry where they've spoke about how we say all the time where teams have become siloed. So it's almost like your SEO team and your social team don't talk to each other. We now finally have a shared dashboard. We've got a metric and a reporting function that both teams can look at. This is something we can both pull from, and it brings us closer together. So it means at the end of month reporting, we're looking at something that it needs insight from both of us. And it's something that a lot of the brands that we speak to at the moment have been like, how do we get this conversation started? Well, now we've got an easy conversation started to start with.
Yeah, and I think it strengthens the position of SEOs in that room as well, because I think I did a talk at Brighton a couple of years ago saying SEOs should be the ones that are leading with the data. And now this means that SEOs can lead with the data with the social search piece. So we can be going to social teams, we can be going to brand teams and bringing them into that conversation, and to Ray's point, breaking down those silos, which is a really good journey to be on.
It's even with influencers, right? It's it's like influencer partnerships. Now we've got an extra metric to look at to show this is how much impact this influencer or this creator has had when doing a campaign. Yeah, it's great. Love it.
To build off of that though, for businesses that maybe have been not putting as much gas onto this as possible, how can they maximize on this opportunity right now? Like if they had a 90-day sort of like plan that they had to follow up on, what would you suggest they maybe start prioritizing right now and tracking over the next 2 or 3 months?
Yeah, for me it would be. Sorry, Ray. For me it would be start with your own channels first. Understand, okay, like we've added the deviation channel to our Google Search Console property. What keywords, where were we gaining impressions for our content already? And then look to either refresh your content or build and amplify on the back of the signals that you receive from your own property content. And then use that information to then decide your first creator partnerships and how you're going to amplify with creators across whichever platforms it is your audience are spending time on. Because once you've got that 48-hour window of Google crawling and getting your data to you, you've then already got a starting point for you to go and start building an initial sort of like proof of concept strategy activation right on the data that's going to be there from day one.
Yeah, I agree. And then to build on that, I would actually take this in like a 4-step approach. And this is what we've been saying to a lot of brands here at Right 7 is we've gone out and we've been saying that first thing you want to do is get your property, your platform properties verified. So that's the first step. Just start with that, just so you can get a play with the platform. I've always done this thing whenever I've gone to a brand or a client, I've said to them, you need to spend time whether it's a new platform. Let's say when TikTok launched years ago, I was saying to brands, you need to actually spend time to get used to how it's going. But it's the same with the measurement platform. You've got to spend time on it to actually get used to it. So first thing is get all your properties added in there in Search Console. It's as simple as opening up an ad property and then finding platforms that you want to add, and then start to set your baseline. So as soon as you've added them, you're going to start having data and information starting to flow through. And it's going to be really important for you to actually start to set a baseline of understanding what you're already getting without doing much strategy, or where you're at currently. This will tell you where you need to put some effort into, where your opportunity lies, and from there you can then go and audit. So we've done loads of blog posts, and I know Ash has done a load of content around this as well, which is all around how you can audit your social content against search. I would start to do that once you've got that data in. And then finally, and I think this is one of the most important steps, is get your SEO and your social team in the same room. And if not, if it's just your social team, most brands only either have just a social team, just an SEO team, or they have a bit of both. Get your agency in the same room, get them all together talking about the impact of this. Because once you've got those metrics, you've audited it, you can then go to the next stage. You can go and actually build a strategy off the back of it, but you need to get people in the same room talking to each other again and building that strategy out. So those are the 4 steps I would go through first. So verify your platforms, get that baseline sorted, audit your channels, and then get your teams in the same room.
Just to build on the audit piece as well, one of the big things, and I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later as well, so we can circle back a little bit, but the keyword optimization conversation around, okay, on Google, it's this keyword. This is what drives search on traditional search. That's going to look completely different to TikTok, YouTube, whatever platform it is. So start mapping the keywords that Google Search Console shows you are gaining impressions from your social content. Map those to what's gaining clicks and impressions from your traditional search content. And then if you are doing prompt tracking, prompt engineering, whatever that is, map it there as well. And then as part of that audit process, you'll understand which videos are contributing to which intent and which keyword. And then again, you can decide, okay, this is the focus for the first 90 days, or this is the focus a little bit later on.
Definitely. I definitely do want to dig into that a little bit more. So if everyone's interested in this, stay tuned. We will be digging into that a little bit later in this episode. I still want to keep on the topic of trending news that was happening over the past few weeks. And Ray, you were at Cannes. And I wanted to ask you posted a really interesting blog, and I encourage everyone to go read it as well. I'll link it down below after this webinar. But you mentioned that one of the biggest, this was a quote from the blog, it said one of the biggest structural shifts you kept thinking about at Cannes is how hard it is to separate social search creators and purchase behavior. So that really stood out to me, and I wanted to ask, what were some of the biggest highlights on social search that Cannes emphasized? And can you elaborate a little bit more on that statement that you made as well.
Yeah, of course. Cannes firstly was an interesting event, and as an SEO, I'd 100% recommend checking it out. It's an incredible experience in terms of seeing it from the other side. I've worked heavily as a search marketer. I've worked in the social space, but this was real campaigns, brands, teams coming together. So as an event overall, it really does change the perception. I saw a reel the other day that came up that basically said that Cannes isn't about just seeing which campaigns did really well or getting ideas from it. It actually inspires you as an individual, as a marketer. So anyone who's listening to this, I would say definitely check it out if you get the chance to. But yeah, there was a lot of interesting conversations happening there. So one of the conversations that I saw across the board from, we hosted dinners there with CMOs. We met with some of the biggest brands out there. We had private workshops where we worked with just consultants and independent agency owners and people like that as well. And the main actual question was all around AI. Everyone's talking about AI visibility and how you can become more visible in AI. A really interesting subsection of that was social search and how it linked into that whole user journey. What's really interesting is with social search content, we've seen this kind of coming and going over the last couple of years, right? There's been a flow of it, but AI is almost dominated above it. But what we've seen now is actually how these two come together. So it's almost like you can take social content and integrate it into your search strategy from an AI point of view. What I mean by that is if you look at where you're getting cited from, and if you look at the different channels, so if you look at AI overviews, YouTube, Reddit, LinkedIn, these are all platforms which you can optimize for search and you can integrate them into the journey. So it was more of an idea of, when we were speaking to brands out there, is when that conversation came up, mapping journeys. And a lot of brands aren't really doing this at the moment. They're not looking at it from a point of view of like, we look at it as there's 4 stages in this journey. So there's trigger, explore, evaluate, and purchase, right? And that happens across multiple different platforms now. We actually did a study on this. I know we're going to talk about this a little later, but we looked at 1.5 billion searches across all these different platforms. What we found is people look at 3.5 platforms on average before making a decision. That's the search journey they go on. The only interesting thing is a lot of people think that search journey happens on one platform. It doesn't anymore. It happens across all these different platforms. And each one of them, especially the ones that do get cited into AI, are having an impact on your visibility, not just in search, not just in social, but in AI as well. So I think social search is a really important part of that user behavior, especially when it comes to that purchase decision. Because it's like when you go to book a holiday, right? We know this because whenever I go to book a holiday, and we've actually got data to back this now, but when you go to book a holiday, the very first thing you do is you make a WhatsApp group chat, right? And you send in blog posts or content or whatever. When I make a group chat with my friends or my girlfriend's family or whoever I'm going to go on holiday with, I'm not sending in a blog post anymore. I'm going on TikTok and I'm searching best things to do in Croatia or whatever, and then sending that video in because the intent matches what people are looking for. So that's where social search sits in that purchase journey now. It influences, it inspires, it educates, but it also is easily shareable and it matches intent.
Yeah, just to build on that really quickly as well, it's not just an AI or an LLM conversation. To Ray's point, it is that an AI or a social search conversation. I think we're having these conversations where already brands have been banned or are experiencing this gamify the AI and gamify the LLMs, and they're already realizing that there's a lot of BS on how to get into those AI and LLMs. But actually, social search gives you this opportunity to go, actually, social search can win today, and we can see and get signals that this is working today, whilst also protecting for that AI future and also building into what's going to be next. So yeah, AI and LLMs really important for right now, but we all know that they're going to be the next big thing in 6-12 months time. The fact that social search allows you to start building that visibility and building that presence, as we call it, in those AI and LLMs now, while still having like monetary value and revenue potential for right now as well, is super important.
And it's seasonal as well. So it's interesting. So let's take Reddit, for example, right? Reddit as a platform. We did a study recently. We partnered with PKI, who's a huge AI tool, visibility tracking tool over in Europe, and they're growing in the US as well. And we did a research study with them around Reddit, especially to see how it impacts AI visibility. And we actually found, one of the data points we found, which I found really interesting, was that you can get featured. Let's say if you integrate yourself into a thread that's 2 years old. Let's say it's about I don't know, my suitcase is breaking whenever I'm going on holiday or something like that, right? Let's say you integrate into that thread and you put some generally useful information, and somehow you get lucky enough the mods let you speak about a brand or you plug a brand within those comment sections. as old as 2 years old, that information is being pulled into AI. We've seen this from the data. So that means that even if you have content that's 2 years old, or you integrate yourself into those threads, it can last and it can have seasonal peaks. The same on TikTok as well, right? So we work with a travel brand. They do UK staycations, and what we noticed was every single year after we did social search optimized content, they would have peaks of people searching. So it's every year it becomes seasonal. It's no longer just a case of this is a one and done strategy. It's no longer a case of 72 hours and my content falls off the feed. It's like now got this seasonal approach to it as well. Which is why when I heard Ash say it just then, I was like, yes, it's a really important point to back down on, because you get the long tail value of it as well alongside just the short tail.
And I think just again, just to build on that, this is like would a game of table tennis, but to build on that a little bit, it's that idea of as well, we know that these huge platforms are likely to always be the destination for AI and LLM to cite from and lean on as well, at least to some degree. So whereas something like your own website and blogs may come and go and may be used by AI for 6 months and then neglected for the next 6 months, it is that idea that if you was a betting man, you would bet on these social platforms to be the destinations that are going to be referenced into the future, because they're going nowhere. Yes, like we can probably chat on this a little bit, but something like Substack could come out of nowhere seemingly and become a really cool source for potential AI and LLM references, but it's not as volatile as maybe backing your own website would be versus these social search destinations.
Awesome. I actually, like, you guys kind of brought me into a nice transition, which was that we wanted to cover the psychology behind social search as well, which I'm quite excited to chat about. So that's focusing on like consumer behavior, trust, and how intent is formed. I sort of curated this for Ashley, but I guess like we can open this up to the floor. But Ashley, you had spoken about social searches where intent becomes belief, and I thought that that was such a strong starting point for this sort of segment. So could you guys walk us through maybe what the psychology of a user looks like who types in a query on TikTok or Reddit versus Google, and what sort of how you guys target that emotional need that they're trying to satisfy, versus on each sort of platform?
Yeah, so to start off with, it's probably not the difference in psychology versus Google, because at the point of a search taking place, the psychology is the same, like across platforms. Like what is going into that journey is someone wants to solve a pain, need, want, or desire. The journey stage with that might change, but the psychology is they want to find a solution to whatever it is that they're looking for. I think the biggest issue was the friction that was provided. So people go to a TikTok now or to a Pinterest or whatever social platform it is, and they're finding that that pain, need, want, or desire is getting solved at a much faster rate than the friction that was caused through 10 blue links on a Google search. And the content we had to create as SEOs and the signals we had to give Google to be successful on those 10 blue links. So it's the first thing is it's not that psychology has changed. The psychology is probably the same, and it's the only thing that I took from my marketing degree that was actually any value was that like psychology and behavior module. But what has changed is the fact that people are sick of the friction and they're not going to put up with that friction now when other destinations exist to get them to their solution much faster. So I'll open it up to Ray and then we can just bat on it. But that was the first thing to call out, is it's not really a versus Google, it's a versus friction is probably the way I'd look at it.
Yeah. I completely agree, especially with the pain points you mentioned at the start. I think they're a very important part of that journey, especially part of that psychology. I think I look at it in a few different ways of when I'm trying to map out psychology when it comes to this. I see it as, let's say you take TikTok, for example, right? You've got your For You page and then you've got your search. If you're on your For You page, you're seeing content that you like. That's stuff that you're interested in, right? So I might like a video that says holiday to the Maldives. Doesn't mean I'm going to book one. However, if I go and search where the best place is to go in the Maldives for a couple in December, there's a lot of intent behind that. So a lot of the times what ends up happening is when a user is searching on these platforms, the same way that we've always done with SEO, and every SEO who's watching this and any search marketer will know, we've always mapped content to intent. And now this has just moved to a different platform. There's a lot of talk in the industry as search has changed. And I used to be part of that crowd where I think search changed, but I've actually just changed that now to search has actually just moved. That's the only difference that's happened. It's just the search bar has moved. We're no longer using Instagram search bar to search for our exes or whatever. The psychology has changed behind it. It's actually gone to the point where we want same to what Ash said, our desires, our emotional needs, triggers. And we look at this, as I said, in a format of it starts with a trigger, right? So if you guys, anyone who's watching this, on my LinkedIn, I've got a visual representation of this. It's about how search has, how it has changed. And we did this in a campaign where it talked about, we use billboards to kind of direct how these journeys look now. And an example might be, we work with a car rental brand. This is a global car rental brand. And one of their customers, when they start looking on these platforms, psychologically, they're not actually directly, the first stage of their journey isn't actually looking for the brand itself. What they're actually looking for is LA road trip riding. And that's the trigger. So they know they're going on a road trip and they go into TikTok, and that's a trigger phase that they're looking for. Then they go into an evaluation phase where they go into the best convertible to buy in LA. And then that might be on Reddit. And then they might go back to TikTok and they might compare 2 car rental brands. And then finally, they'll go to Google, and then they'll go into a purchase phase, and they'll search the brand and go, this is the convertible car I want from this place. But that's the psychology of it. You almost go for trigger, evaluation, where you evaluate into, and then you're going through exploration exploration first, then evaluation, and then you go into purchase. And that journey there, you can see directly how different, similar to what Ash said, the different emotional triggers that go across there. And that's how I think the psychology of search works now. It's always been like that on Google. It's just multi-platform now. That's the only difference. We've seen this across every brand that we work with. Even when it comes so we work with Red Bull, the energy drink brand. And when we're mapping out for if they want to break into the healthy drinks section, if they want to break into the pre-workout section, the trigger stage might be for someone, how I'm feeling tired at the gym, and they might be asking that on Reddit. They're a new person to the gym. Oftentimes, if you've joined the gym older and you haven't been going to been part of that fitness journey, I know this because I entered the fitness world very late. I've only recently started going into it, and my first stage of that was going straight to Reddit and asking, I feel tired at the gym. So that's like the very first stage. And then they might go to YouTube and compare 2 different energy drinks, or they might go into an exploration phase where they ask, what is pre-workout versus energy drink? What gets me more energy quicker? Is caffeine the same? Like, you might go through these things, and then their purchase phase might be completely different. And this one's a really interesting one for retailers, is their purchase phase might not happen online. Their purchase phase might be just walking in store and actually purchasing it off the shelf. So it's harder to attribute, but it shows the psychology of the journey that they go through when making that decision.
Just to build on that as well, because I think you covered a lot of good points there. It's this idea as well of, so Ray mentioned FYP, we know this is content that I love, or it's content that I like. Then I go and take a search, and that's what's got that high intent moment. But there's also the idea that the algorithm is going to recognize that I've searched for that query and then show me more of that style of content on my FYP, because it then starts to associate my search with, Ray must like this content, let me show him more of that content. So with Google, we always had this issue as SEOs of, to move people down the funnel, we needed them to take the next step. So if they dropped off the website or dropped off their Google journey and went about their day, we then needed them to take another search before they were back in the user journey and before they could move down the funnel. Now what we have is a case of, we can create demand through the FYP and through optimizing for making people take a search. Then we can have demand capitalization that is there for when people have took that search. But then we can also have an acknowledgement of, actually, we can create the next piece of the funnel, and the FYP is going to show that piece of content or move people naturally through the journey. So we know social journeys are quicker anyway, but I think this is one of the big contributing reasons to why that is, because you'll both know, if you took a TikTok search for like, I've just booked a holiday to Morocco, my FYP is now filled with Morocco content, Agadir content. So obviously, like, it's going, well, I'm going to Morocco now, because I was only just looking, and now I've seen where to eat, I've seen the best hotels, I've seen the best bars, whatever it is, and it's got me hyped about it, all off the back of one search. Whereas historically, that might have been 3 or 4 different interactions with a Google results page. And I think that's really powerful to Ray's point in terms of the psychology, in terms of speeding it up, and it's giving us that element of, it's not quite FOMO, but it's almost FOMO, if that makes sense, and bombarding people, but in the best way possible as well, which is really cool.
And what I love about this as well is it's for marketers. This gives us so much information. So it's so much like, so there's a just touch on that psychology bit as well. Just building on that was, we have this we, often as especially social marketers and generic marketers or people who just do the brand side of things, we use social listening data, we use some survey data, we use kind of like consumer research. That's it. What's interesting is search gives us so much more insight than we actually realize. An example that I spoke at Social Day recently. An example I used for that was, anyone who's a fan of Justin Bieber will know, if you look on his Instagram, he's he's all loved up, he's married to Hailey Bieber. The paparazzi got a screenshot of his search history, and it turns out that he was actually searching his ex, right? So it gives an insight of, there's a version of yourself you put out there on social, and that's what social listening picks up, and that's what you want to put out to the world. Like, even our likes are public now, like if you like something on Instagram, your friends can see it on the For You page. So that's the version we're putting outside. But our search bar tells a completely different story. It gives real insight. Now, we actually work with a debt relief brand over in the US, right? And what's really interesting when we work with them is, if we just went off social listening data and we didn't look at social search data, we wouldn't have found out a really key opportunity of how to actually provide a solution to their prospect customers. And what we found was, basically, we looked at a load of searches and how people search and how they were looking for different types of debt relief, and when the actual trigger point was for them. And we found, for millennials in the US, it is when they get to the supermarket checkout and their card declines, that is when they know that they're in debt. And that's when they go to search for help. And we would never have found that if you just based off search data or data that's available, or the way that people portray themselves. So it shows that there's an element of brand growth that can be done through social search, but there's also an element of, we can actually, as search marketers, as SEOs, as people who work on this side, we have the opportunity now to provide these insights to the rest of our team. As agencies, we can go out and help brands to grow, because this is insight that they didn't previously have access to, or they did and they just never knew they could.
Yeah, and I think, just to use one of our examples as well, one of our early strategies, and it's won quite a few awards on the back of this type of data as well, is we work with a dog brand called Bully Billows. They do like premium accessories for dogs, basically, and they were coming up with the same type of products again and again in really cool different ways, different materials for different situations, etc. But what they weren't doing was using search data to inform product decisions and product buying and design decisions. So we found a search around AirTag dog collars, and obviously people wanting to attach an Apple AirTag to their dog collar. And we gave that to the brand and said, look, you guys should be going and creating an AirTag collar for Bully Billows. And they went and did that in a really cool way as well. So they took our search data, then put that in front of the product team, and actually, rather than replacing the full collar, they came up with like a 3D printed attachment to all collars, which then covers the competitor branding with Bully Billows branding as well. And this was all done through a conversation around us as the search team with the social team and then the products discovery team at Bully Billows. And yeah, we was able to create a new product entry into the category for them and move their preference in that space as well, which was really cool. So yeah, that's a cool example of how you can use search data for different purposes.
Yeah, because it's almost like you're taking something that it's like I think it's something like 15,000 new terms are made every year, or new searches are made every year, and if you can tap into that, you can find it. We did the same thing with Pretty Little Thing with airport outfits. So it was like when airport outfits started to trend, go up, and then we were like, create a category, get the teams together, put all the what do you wear tracksuit to the airport, and then go and create that on the website. And that was like a Google version, but I love that. Yeah, it's really great to just find it.
That's where you take the idea of Shark Ninja have done it massively around the LED face mask. I've spoken about this a few times. But that idea of, well, this is a new category, this is a new conversation. Yes, there's interest in this LED face mask, but we think this could be an absolutely huge opportunity. So they grew their preference and their presence within that space, whilst also growing the conversation of LED face mask at the same time. So not only are they now the biggest brand in that space, but they've grown the space as a result of their search content and their demand gen content in that conversation. So yeah, Shark Ninja are a really good example of a brand creating the demand and then capitalizing on it through their search content as well. So yeah, it's a really good example.
So I'm kind of jumping the gun here because one of my sort of end questions is this, but I wanted to actually ask on the topic of like trend hopping. How do you determine like brand aligned content that has ROI impact versus short-lived trends? And what's sort of the distinction that you make that determines the ROI on whether or not to hop on a trend or not?
So for me, there's two distinctions, and you can participate in either. And I think that there's not necessarily a right and wrong way around this, but for some brands, it makes sense, and they've got the agility, they've got the product catalog, they've got the infrastructure to allow them to trend hop, and it makes sense for their audience, and it makes sense for them as a brand, and that's absolutely fine. What we're seeing for a lot of brands is that actually they want to be much more methodical and much more strategic with the conversations that they're participating in. And rather than trend hopping, rather than looking to participate in everything, because they don't have that agility, because they don't want to show up in that way, they would rather focus on, we actually want to either create a cultural moment and earn that conversation, or earn recurring conversations that we know are going to be important to the brand. So when we have our immersion sessions, that's one of the key areas that we're looking to explore. And yes, there's an element of actually we think you should be participating within that trend and you should be participating within that moment. And we can talk about how we'll evaluate the ROI on that specifically. But for most of our brands, it is the idea of be methodical, identify the conversations, build a campaign that lets you earn that moment, earn that conversation, and leave others to scrap about the trend. Because I follow Michael Corcoran, the ex social guy at Ryanair, and he says there's this idea of getting an impression is a lot different to making an impression. And that stuck with me a little bit this year. It's this idea of, yeah, you can participate within trends, but are you growing your brand preference within the trend, or are you just growing the trend? What is the sticking point? So yeah, a couple of thoughts there. But for me, it would be trend hopping has to make sense for the brand, and they have to be able to capitalize on it after the search. If they don't have the product, if they don't have the infrastructure to be reactive to that, lean on cultural conversations and
100%. Yeah. But yeah, shout out to Michael as well. Guy's a genius. I've learned so much from him over the last couple of years, just seeing his content. I see we actually see this in a few different ways. So at Rise, we have this saying called "We chase consumers and not algorithms," because the algorithm always ends up chasing the consumer anyway. And we've seen this across multiple platforms. Across my career, this is exactly what I've seen. And we look at it from a perspective of fast and slow content. So fast content is often trend based and it's reactive, and we love that because it's something we have the Rise Live team. We have a team that literally it feels like you sat in, I don't know if you watched Wolf of Wall Street, but when they've got all the screens with it, all the updates and news, and the team is literally so good at jumping on cultural moments and really understanding what's happening, and that's fast content that works really well. And then you've got slow content, which is more search optimized content. What's really interesting is, and there's a few points about this, right? So whenever I work with firstly, we work with a lot of fun brands anyway. We've worked with Shark Ninja, Red Bull. Like these are all of our clients who are, you would see as exciting and fun. You can do a lot of exciting, fun stuff with them. We also work with a lot of brands that are more slower, B2B, finance, lots of regulation. And we do really good work in these because what we figured out is actually you can use other tactics to get this fast content and trend-based content without actually ruining the brand aesthetic. Now, this is the same as big brands anyway. Sometimes we'll get pushback from brands that say, well, actually, we don't want to put this type of search content because it's not trend led, it's not alongside the brand guidelines because it feels out of place here. And we get that. We don't want to ruin that, and we understand the importance of that. This is not a case of like search has to replace everything. This is a case of how can we make it work for your brand and business. Creators are a great way around that because creators have their own accounts. Search optimized briefs. Now, we've been creating search optimized briefs now for 7 odd years for creators to add keywords into their videos, into what they're saying, into the caption. and that allows you to go and take that content and not have it sit on your account. So that's one way of doing it. The second way of doing it is actually optimizing it in a way where it still fits with the trending content. So this is really interesting because a lot of people think search content has to be boring. So let's say you're doing how to pack my suitcase effectively for going on a solo backpacking trip, right? That's something you might look at for a travel brand, right? That doesn't have to be a boring piece of content, and it shouldn't be, because in order for it to rank, it actually has to have good engagement. So, like, in order for it to rank on TikTok or Instagram or get pulled in, to a degree, it does have to have a good level of engagement, which means it actually has to be a really good piece of content as well. So, for example, I use this. We work with a running shoe brand, and they're one of the biggest running shoes brands in the world. And they've never done social search content before. This is and when we did it for them, we actually looked at it from the perspective of, let's say you wanted to own the category, because we help brands to own their category for running shoes, right? So like long distance running shoes might be the category they wanted to own. In order for them to do that, they would have to create a content that ranks for that. Now they could have just created, these are the best distance running shoes, blah, blah, blah. It would never have ranked. The reason it wouldn't have ranked is boring content, it wouldn't have got no engagement. However, if they did a marathon style vlog for the London Marathon, talking about long distance running shoes and integrating those keywords into that content, firstly would have performed really well, because it's part of culture, it's reactive to a moment that's happening with the London Marathon, it's seasonal, it's something that happens every year, and it can be optimized for search. So when people look for it, it's interesting. But then it would have gained a lot of engagement, so it ranked really well as well. So you can actually combine the two together, but there's ways to do that as well if the brand doesn't want to. We've spent a lot of time studying and researching this and really getting this right for brands. And yeah, there's ways around it, and there's ways that you can do it if you do it right.
So just to build on that as well, because we had a really good example this week, especially in the UK, is this idea around, to lean on Ray's energy drink conversation from earlier. We can still be looking to participate in what are the big moments, the big conversations with trend content as well, and with trending moments. So strategically, it works long term because it still meets the need of that conversation and that sort of pillar. But it's also trend-led and moment-led, and that moment would have been England playing Mexico in the World Cup at 1 a.m. and then me having to go to work the next day. I'm at Madfest at the moment, so me having to travel down to Madfest the next day, and it's like, how the hell am I going to survive that day? That's where you can then bring in those energy drinks into that conversation, whether it's tying it to productivity hacks for the next day, gym hacks for the next day, whatever it looks like. It still meets those big pillars that we've talked about, whether that's productivity hacks, workout plans, whatever it is, but you're leaning on a trend moment to unlock that and get you there. So that's another way is that you can actually combine the two and make sure that it still meets the need of the strategy, but it's talking in a really timely manner.
An example that we literally just did was, I don't know if you saw our Beer Mats campaign.
Yes, yeah.
That was, firstly, shout out to the team at Rise, the PR team who came up with that, but they actually based that off search insight data. So it's looking at when is historically the most likely time, the best time to go to the bar to go get a drink. And we looked at historic data based off those search trends that people were looking at when the best time was to go to the bar. We knew this was important. We linked it back to one of our clients, and we found, based on historic data from the World Cup, actually the 75th minute is when it's most likely for a goal to be scored. I'm not a huge football fan, but after seeing Harry Kane score in the 75th minute, I was like, look at that, brilliant, great timing. And yeah, so it just shows the power that you can have, and just like Ash said, that you can really build off these moments, and search data can feed that.
Definitely. It makes me think as well, throughout the conversation, Ashley had mentioned social search cannot be SEO blogs in video form. So what would your advice be to those people that are actually like just taking their blogs and turning it into videos?
The issue that you've got is that's not going to get, to Ray's point, that's not going to gain the engagement, because the whole reason that social search exists is because we were sick of the friction that blogs were causing at the time. That's why there's been this move away from that type of content. So to just be taking your historic blogs and bringing them over to whether it's YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is, that's a massive disservice to the platform and to the audience. So what I would say is bring the topics over, but you have to think about those social first. It has to stop the scroll, basically. And if it can stop the scroll, if you've got an effective hook, an effective format, and you can drive those for me, from a search point of view, it's always shares and saves. I think those are the really good indicators of that intent being retained for future activity. So shares and saves are the ones I would look to. If you then start to see that content achieves that, you've got a good format, you've got a good hook. Elevate that with future creators or your own content across other platforms as well. But don't just bring over, my phrase is, don't always bring over like H2s and then script, H3, then script. It's not going to work. Just focus on social first, being the MO of the day.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because we actually recently I recently held an event at the Shard where we spoke about how we can actually integrate content to make it more useful. And I think the problem is right now with the industry is we're just making useless content. And I actually partly blame AI because of this, because we've got to the point now we're just pumping out really weak content, and people think because that's working, or it was working for a small amount of time on Google, we can just do that across every platform. Let's just copy and paste and just distribute it everywhere. And I get why people do that, because it's faster, it saves time, there's efficiencies, all these things that go into it. But if your content isn't genuinely useful, it's not going to break through. And in order to be useful, it doesn't just mean that it gives the information. It's got to be entertaining. It's got to make people stop scroll. It's got to make people actually, like Ash said, saves are so important. They're such a key metric. We actually did an entire post about what makes a piece of content useful quite recently. I'm pretty sure it's on my LinkedIn somewhere. But it looked at things like, if you've got a social piece of content, things to actually signal that you're useful are things like saves, shares. Are you getting DMs off the back of it? Are people commenting saying useful information? On SEO, it could be things like how many earned links. And I don't just mean if you've done a link building campaign, how many links you're getting off of it. We do a data study. We did a data campaign for a website building company that we work with. And that brand there, we did the most, it was like how the most slowest websites in the world and what the reasons why they're slow. So it was based off data, right? And it was so useful even after the outreach for 2 years onwards, it was getting links back to it, earned links. That's a really useful piece of content. And that's how you know that content is good, because it signals to it. Same with if you're looking at video, you can look at watch time. Are people watching your video to the end of it? Because if they are, then they know that's a useful piece of content. And it can be across anything, even AI and discovery. How many times on AI are you getting mentioned? Are you getting cited? Is your share of visibility in that platform growing? Because it's showing that you're creating enough useful content that people actually want to refer back to it and link back to it. And I think the other point of that is, as well, again, going back to engagement metrics, is like I said, if like that running shoe brand, if they literally just created a video of someone sat in front of a shoe and going, this is the best shoe for marathons because X, Y, and Z, most people aren't going to watch that. They're not going to find it interesting. They won't be entertained by it. And it's that other point. Usefulness is more than just get good information. It is the entertainment aspect. It is the engagement aspect of it as well.
That's what's going to get your brand over as well, right? Like if you somehow manage to get the engagement with that how-to content, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be remembered as the brand. You might solve a pain, need, want, or desire, but you're not cutting through to then force a brand search at the end of all of this. So you need to be memorable. You need to be remembered. And it's like, if you think about the best TV ads, the Cadbury Gorilla, all of that type of stuff, that entertain first, they're the ones that stick in the mind. And we can achieve that with our organic content as well. Putting search at the heart of it, making sure that it helps with those pains, needs, want, or desires, but it still needs to be memorable and make sure that the brand gets that cut through.
Kind of actually transitions into this question that I wanted to line up at the end, which was, so with a passive discovery phase, what sort of metrics and signals are you guys looking at that a brand should actually focus on to prove like top of funnel content that's successful? So like suggestions I had was which was like, are we looking at like brand search lift, specific cross-platform keyword matching, or is like it's something else entirely? What is your guys' sort of approach to top of funnel content that's like a passive discovery phase look like?
Cool. So there's a couple of things on this. I think me and Ray tend to agree, going on the content and the conversations we've had. Brand search and brand search uplift and that share of search is a huge conversation to be having, and that should be one of the big goals of your content is, did people watching and engaging with this content facilitate a brand search at the end of it. That's a really good one. I think that as well, we should be looking to get technical a little bit. Is, are we increasing average order value? Are we increasing conversion rate on those pages? And we know traffic's down more broadly, but if we can be growing conversion rate and average order value, they're going to be really good signals for us that actually we're having the cut through that we want with our organic content. We can follow the journey of, we created this content that was optimized for brand plus this intent pillar. We then have a landing page for that brand plus intent pillar, and that is designed to capitalize on that content, and then we move people towards conversion. A really good example of this as well is, don't just create your landing pages with the Google keywords in mind. I think Adidas have done a really good example of this with their bloke core PLP, which if you search for bloke core on Google, was only getting 320 searches a month. Yeah, if you go look at the conversation, especially around the World Cup at the moment, on social platforms, that's a thriving economy. It's a thriving conversation. So there's this idea of moving people to a landing page that directly maps the conversation and directly, mirrors the conversation that's taking place. If you can do that, there where the signals start to present themselves. So for me, brand search, brand uplift, share of search, and then nerdy metrics like average order value, conversion rate, and obviously if you're making more revenue broadly, that's always a good signal as well.
Great, yeah. Everything Ash just said there, definitely look at every single one of those metrics, really important. We also like to look at it of a standpoint of category leadership. So one thing that we do here at Rise, we help brands to own their category. And we've done that now for some incredible brands, and we've been able to use the metrics that we use to measure that show that. And a lot of them are the ones that Ash has just mentioned there. So that might include things like focusing directly on organic growth. So what we look at there, that can be a combination of organic visibility, share of search, and then brand search volume, just like Ash just mentioned there. And I think brand search volume uplift is a really important one because, like you said, with social search content in particular, you're pushing demand for a business and brand. But what we really like to look at is category salience. So the reason why we find this really important is because, let's say you take Ninja an air fryer, right? Ninja is one of our clients, and when we're trying to help them to own, and we've helped them own the category now for the term air fryer, but in order to get there, you have to actually use a combination of different metrics to measure that. But if you look at it from a standpoint of when people search for Ninja, are they searching for Ninja plus air fryer? But the thing is, there is salience there now, because I know if I went to my girlfriend and go, what's your favorite air fryer brand? She'd instantly say Ninja. But it's one of those things where it's taking a lot of touch points to get to that stage, and social search plays a massive part in that, whether that's across TikTok and you're searching the best air fryer, whether it's on AI and you're asking that. And in order to get there, you have to actually build those different touch points that feed back into these different algorithms.
Yeah, just to build on that as well, it's a cool one as well if you start to see. So let's imagine there's the Shark Ninja LED face mask conversation. If you start to see that more content is being created in that conversation space that is organically talking about your brand that you've not directly been involved with, that's a really good idea of to Ray's point, that category salience, that category preference. Because again, it's meaning that people have probably seen your early search content, and then they've gone and created their own solution to that content as well, solution to that query as well. Another one that I'm liking at the moment, shout out to the social tip guys, because we had a bit of a chat with those, and this came on the back of that chat, is organic CPM. I think at a time where paid activity is becoming incredibly competitive and incredibly expensive for a lot of brands, that ability to not steal real estate from paid, but at least be able to say, look, your cost is this, the organic CPM is this, according to the same metrics, is really interesting. And I think, again, it gives us that idea of working with more broadly, breaking down the silos, saying to a paid team, well, in this category, in this conversation, we've achieved an organic CPM of X. We should be using this content for paid. We should be amplifying this with paid activity, bringing those guys into the work as well. So yeah, lean on organic CPM, because as I say, I had a bit of a light bulb moment as soon as that got presented to me, and I was like, oh, that's really cool.
And then now you got Search Console as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Guys, I could honestly have had this conversation go for the next 2 hours, but yeah, I just wanted to be aware of time as well. I did want to shout out, Ashley, you mentioned that you have a new newsletter that's going out. Do you just want to tell everyone a little bit about that before we head off?
Yeah, that would be awesome. So we've started newsletter everywhere, obviously. So if you go to LinkedIn, you'll be able to find that newsletter. And the idea there is that we're going to be sharing things that have come up in this conversation, sharing some really cool insights, some considerations around how to connect these search journeys from traditional SEO to social search and eventually to that AI and LLM gold mine that we're all seeking.
Perfect. And Ray, you also mentioned a multi-channel search report, which it would be super helpful for, everyone listening to this conversation as well. So do you want to give the listeners a little bit about backstory about that quickly?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, anyone who's watching, if you go to the Rise of 7 website, rise7.com, there's actually a section which we have called blogs and resources. And under that resources thing, we have something called the multi-channel search report. And now the multi-channel search report, we went and reviewed 1.5 billion searches across multiple different categories and industries to basically give an insight into where your consumers are searching at the moment, what platform they're focused on. It gives a really good steer on which platform you should be focused on from a social search standpoint. Alongside that, in that same section on the website, we have the category leaderboard. Now, if you're a brand or a business who's looking to understand where you sit within your category salience, like I mentioned about Ninja and Air Fryer and other brands there like Red Bull and Energy Drink, you can really get an understanding of where you sit by looking at that and if you own your category or not. We actually partnered with Ahrefs to put that together, and the search science team and their team as well, and our SEO team. Some really smart people got in the room together and basically were able to produce an algorithm and an actual equation to actually work this out in terms of like what the weighting should be in terms of how much demand you have for your category versus your brand, how much search opportunity you have, your search insights, and also your ranking on Google and visibility in AI as well. So pairing all these together gives us a real holistic view of whether you're owning your category or not, and it's a really good way to start off and benchmark where you sit. What's really interesting as well is it's really easy to read. So if you go on there as a brand and you click on it and you go and want to find out where your opportunity lies, should I do more SEO? Should I be doing more demand? Should I be going to create social search content, or should I be focusing on AI visibility? You'll be able to easily see that, and there's a whole video tutorial about how you can do that as well. So, and also, Ash, I watched your video with Josh when I was out in Barcelona with him, and I've got to say, one of the most inspiring stories I've seen. Honestly, huge shout out.
Appreciate that, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorites. I will be putting all the links to this video in our comments and in our YouTube description, so you guys can check it out there. Ray and Ashley, thank you so much for such a wonderful conversation. And yeah, everyone make sure to follow them, and we will chat soon.